What's going on, everybody? It's Christian from the Beyond the Bench podcast here. Today, I'm going to be giving you my personal March Madness predictions. As you guys saw in our last video, which will probably be uploaded a couple hour, maybe a little after, maybe a little sooner, but an hour before this video. And Nick gave his rankings and his March Madness bracket predictions based on which logo he thought was the coolest. Definitely some interesting takes in there, I must say. But yeah, without further ado, this is the official Beyond the Bench March Madness predictions. I've watched a lot of college basketball this year, more than usual, if I'm being completely honest. Obviously, I don't know anything. I have my feelings, I have my biases, but who doesn't in March? And March is the time for upsets, so you never really know what's going to happen. So, no more stalling. Let's get into it. First game we got going on here. Duke versus Siena. I mean, there's really not much to say here. I mean, the 16 seed games, there's really not much to even talk about here for this one. We got Duke moving on. And by the way, we are going to go region by region all the way to the Final Four. So yeah, just want to point that out. So, this game, Ohio State TCU, is probably, if I had to guess, the closest, most decisive, not I guess, yeah, the closest game for the 8-9s. The users' picks don't really show it. I'm honestly surprised with these picks. I think TCU is a great team. I think Ohio State is hot. Ohio State is very hot right now. 6-4 in their last 10 with big wins over Iowa. Penn State's not that good, but they got some big wins going on here. Lost to Iowa, beat Iowa. They beat Wisconsin. That's a big win. That's a huge win, actually. Wisconsin's a really good team. Narrowly lost to Virginia. Almost beat Michigan. That's the thing that a lot of people, I feel like, are basing their picks off of. They almost beat Michigan. They did beat Purdue. TCU is also one of the hottest teams in the country, only losing to Kansas and UCF in their last 10 games. This Kansas game was really close. Good game. I think TCU, I don't know. It's something about them. They got something about them for me. I know Bruce Thornton's a great player, and I don't know. It stinks that they're gonna have to go out this early, but I'm taking TCU here. I'm very high on TCU in this tournament. St. John's, Northern Iowa. I feel like Northern Iowa just always seems to find a way into the tournament every single year. This year they won the Missouri Valley Conference, even though they had an 11-9 conference record. They found a way to win their conference. But St. John's. I mean, I'm a fan of St. John's. I'm a fan of Tennessee. So you're going to see some bias in there. 28-6 with the 21st ranked strength of schedule this year. They are 9-1. Only loss coming to UConn in that awful blowout. And I believe they are 9-1 in their last 10, but they won like 15 or 16 games in a row before that. They are another really hot team. Zuby. I love Zuby. I love Zuby. Zuby is such a good player. I feel like this is a big upset a lot of people are going to be taking. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ride with my boys, the Johnnies. Kansas Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist, this is their first tournament bid ever. Net rank 98. Kansas, they were looking great, Kansas. They were riding into the tournament. They still picked up a 4 seed, but ever since Darren Peterson came back, they're 5-5 in their last 10. They beat Houston, they lost to Houston. They beat Arizona, they lost to Arizona. Ever since Darren Peterson came back, I don't know. He's supposed to be their best player, but something's just been off about this team. And I don't know. There's just something seemed off about them. Cal Baptist, hot team, 8-2 in their last 10, winning, 6 in a row? Winning their whole tournament as the 2 seed. I think they were in that tournament. I don't know. I can't see Cal Baptist winning this game, if I'm being completely honest. I think Even though they haven't been the best team as of late, I think Kansas is still the way better team here. Moving on, Louisville versus the University of South Florida Bulls. We got the American champion here. I believe it's their first tournament bid in 10, 11 years, maybe even a little longer. Louisville was one of the best teams in the country this year. I know they got a 6 seed, 6-4 in their last 10. They kind of fell off. I believe they were ranked top 12 at one point this season. But USF is one of, if not the hottest team in the country right now. 10 in a row at least. I don't even know. Louisville has a couple injuries here, so is South Florida. I think this is a big upset a lot of people are going to be taking, and I'm one of those people. I have South Florida moving on here to face Tom Izzo. I really don't think this is much of a question here, if I'm being completely honest. The Tom Izzo going to round of 32. Wouldn't be surprised if there's an upset here, though. Tom Izzo in March. UCLA, UCF. I'm big on a lot of teams in this tournament. UCLA, I am huge on this year, and net rank 30, 4-6 against top 25. UCF has not a bad record, honestly, against top 25. UCF had a very tough strength schedule this year. They're scoring points, but they're giving up a lot of points. They're 4-6 in their last 10. Not great. They beat BYU and TCU, who are great teams. They got blown out by Arizona. Lost to West Virginia. Lost to Oklahoma State. You lost to Baylor. None of those teams are in the tournament. You lost to Cincinnati over here. You beat them by 1 in overtime. I don't see UCF moving on, and I feel like a lot of people do. But I think UCLA has a really good chance to make it far in this tournament. And UConn versus Furman. Not much to say here. I know Furman's upset Virginia in the past. I believe that was Virginia who they upset. But I can't pick against UConn in this first round here. Now, as we move on to the round of 32, we got Duke going up against TCU. Duke is the best team in the country for a reason, right? They're not going to lose against TCU. TCU is a good team. Duke is the best team. And when you're the best team, I can't pick against you in this type of game. Now, St. John's in Kansas. St. John's got screwed with They got screwed with the region they were put in. They have Duke. They got Duke. They got Kansas. They got Michigan State, and they got UConn. I was talking to my friend today. I believe he told me that 7 of the top 13 defenses are in this part of the bracket. Now, as we go to look, St. John's net rank 16 makes no sense how they got a 5 seed. That's the other way they got screwed. I think they should be higher than Nebraska. I think there's an argument for them to be the same rank, if not higher than Virginia. Right? So, Kansas, like I said, haven't looked like the same team. 6-6 against top 25. Hardest strength of schedule in the nation. But I don't know. This is probably my bias coming out, like I said. But I think we got St. John's moving on to face the Blue Devils in the Sweet 16. We'll see what I think about that in a minute. As we move on to South Florida versus Michigan State, I think Tom Izzo might make it a little bit of a run this year. I don't think South Florida is going to be that Cinderella team that goes so far. You will see who I have that team as, because you got to have a Cinderella every year. You will see. It's not surprising. They've been a Cinderella before, but I got to ride the wave. Michigan State is taking this one against South Florida. Now, we got UCLA against the UConn Huskies. I think that they got Jalen Stewart. Yep. Not too many injuries, can't lie. Game time decision here. But listen, if you're a game time decision in March Madness, you're going to play the game. I'm not it's like playing in the World Series. If you're going to be a game time decision, you can't be day to day when you're in the World Series. You're going to play the game, right? So that being said, I'm going to take UCLA. The Bruins here against UConn. I could see this game going either way. I think a lot of people are going to pick UConn to go very far. I don't. I just can't see that happening. Um, I think the UCLA Bruins are going to take them down. They're a very fun team to watch this year. I think they're going to take down UConn. Now, I will say this now. Would it be fun to see St. John's versus UConn in the Elite Eight? Not as a St. John's fan, but I think it would be very fun to see. I just don't see that happening in this year's bracket. Then we got Duke and St. John's, and unfortunately, I think this is where the Johnnies' run ends. Right? Because Duke has all these injuries here. Caleb Foster, and I believe they have another injury or something. I can't remember if I'm being completely honest. But there's a good chance, not a good chance, there is a chance that Duke will lose one of these games and not make it to the Final Four. Right? I don't personally see that happening. I think Duke is too much of a powerhouse. I believe they're the number one defense in the KenPom rankings, or maybe number 2. Let me double check that. No, they're number 2. I think Michigan's number 1 in defensive rating. Yeah, so Michigan's number 1, Duke's number 2 in defensive rating. They're the two best teams in the country for a reason. St. John's, on the other hand, they are, what's that? 12th. They're the 12th ranked defense in the nation, KenPom rankings, which, if we're being completely honest, I think a lot of people think that they are higher in the rankings than they actually are. And I'm going to take Duke here. But I think a lot of people are overestimating St. John's a little bit. I mean, one of them being me. But I think they are not going to be... I think you take the under in that game. Depending on what the spread is, you might take St. John's points. I could see that spread being a 10.5 point spread, and you got to take St. John's points there because these defenses are so good that I don't think either team is going to allow the other team to pull away. And as we move on, Michigan State, UCLA, Big Ten matchup for the ages. But Tom Izzo in March is going to catch up to them, and we're going to have Duke versus the UCLA Bruins going on to the Elite Eight, with the winner moving on to the Final Four, which is going to be the Duke Blue Devils. I think they're just too good of a team to not make it to the Final Four this year. And listen, I'm not going to be surprised if they don't. I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Johnnies go all the way to the Final Four. UConn could go to the Final Four. I don't see Michigan State doing it. It's really Duke, the Johnnies, or UConn. And honestly, UCLA being a dark horse in that discussion of teams going to the Final Four. I think they're an extremely fun team, like I said, but they are going to be no match for the Blue Devils. Now, as we move on into the West region, we got Arizona versus the LIU Sharks. Right? Yeah, we're just gonna take Arizona here and move on with our day. Right? So we got Villanova versus Utah State. The Mountain West always has representation, obviously, but I feel like there's a lot more representation usually when it comes to Utah State. Villanova in a very, honestly, an easier Big East than normal, if I'm being completely honest. Went 15-5, same as Utah State in their conference. Utah State had the more difficult strength of schedule. Utah State scores more points. They give up less points. They're one of the highest scoring teams in the nation. They are, I believe, 28th ranked in offensive rating this year, and the 45th ranked in defensive rating in KenPom. Their net rating is, let's see if I can find them here. I lost them. I can't find them. They're 30th in KenPom, 26th here. Villanova, on the other hand, if I can find them, because I'm just scrolling around here. Pulling up the KenPom rankings, guys, just so you know. Got to get my stats right before I get them wrong. So you got Villanova is in the net rating 33. So, two very close teams, 33 in the net rating, 41 Villanova in offensive and 35 in defensive. So, it's kind of just a flip-flop here. I'm very high on Utah State. This is one of the teams I'm high on. Not think they're going to beat Arizona. A little spoiler. Can Villanova make a run? I don't think so. Can Utah State make a run? I don't think so. But in this matchup here, you're going to have me taking Utah State. Now, this is a very interesting matchup here. Wisconsin versus High Point. Before the bracket came out, I had been saying over and over and over and over, whoever High Point plays is going to lose. Whether they're 13, whether they're 12, whoever plays High Point is going to lose. They might be the highest scoring team in the nation. I could be wrong. But score 90 points a game, only give up 70. That's a 20-point gap. I think they got the worst possible 5 seed that they could have in Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin has a chance to make a run. They kind of got screwed with their matchup because I think that Wisconsin, looking at this, I think I'll get to this, but I think there's literally only 2 teams in this region that Wisconsin would lose to. And one of those teams is Arkansas. Now, I'm taking Wisconsin here as much as I want to take High Point. I will be taking Wisconsin. Arkansas, Hawaii, their first tournament in 10 years, Hawaii. The Rainbow Warriors. But Arkansas is your SEC champion. And as a Tennessee fan, I've watched a lot of SEC basketball this year. Arkansas is the real deal. And I think that they have an amazing chance to make a big run here in this tournament, which is why it stinks that Wisconsin has to match up against them. I think this is going to be one of the best games in the tournament, Wisconsin-Arkansas, if it does play out to be that way. And I think that I'll get to what I think about that. Next up, we have BYU versus either Texas or NC State. Like I said, I watch a lot of SEC basketball, and I think Texas is going to take that game against NC State tonight. Now, BYU, both teams 5-5 in their last 5. BYU losing to the number 2 seeded Houston, number 1 seeded Arizona, another the 10 seeded UCF, and then 2 teams that are not in the tournament. Texas, on the other hand, playing in the SEC, is beating up on these bad teams down here, except Missouri. We'll get to that. But they're losing to all these really good teams. And I think that BYU is just going to kind of run away with it. They have one of the best players in the country in AJ Diabont. I've never known how to say his name. I know who he is. Never known how to say his name. I believe he's a projected top pick in the NBA draft, rightfully so. He's averaging 25.3 points per game. He's just a force to be reckoned with on the court, and I think that might take BYU a little far as we move on to Gonzaga versus Kennesaw State. Gonzaga, always a high seed, always an extremely low strength of schedule, 87th in the nation in strength of schedule. But if you look at that, they win the games that count. They are 4-1 against top 25 teams this year. You're looking at their last 10. It's conference play, so they're going to beat up on all those teams in their conference. Kennesaw State doing the same thing. Now, I want to look at these teams that Gonzaga beat, if I'm being honest. The top 25 teams. Not that I'm going to have them lose. We're going to take Gonzaga here against Kennesaw State. But I just want to point out the wins that Gonzaga did have here, as they are the 12th ranked team in the nation. They lost to Michigan. All right. They beat Creighton while they were ranked 23. Creighton's not good this year. They beat Alabama. That's a big win. They beat Kentucky. Kentucky's pretty good. They beat UCLA when they were ranked 25th. That's another good win. And who else did we beat here? They beat Creighton. That's 1. They beat Bama. That's 2. Kentucky 3. UCLA 4, and that lost to Maryland. Okay, so Gonzaga has some good wins, not great wins. They lost to Michigan, understandably so, but they're going to beat Kennesaw State here. Now, Miami, Missouri. I might just be SEC bias here, but I'm going to take Missouri. Missouri's looked not terrible. I've watched them play Tennessee a couple times. I believe one of them's on here. Yep, they beat us. Right. Excuse me. They beat Tennessee right here. That I remember watching that game. That game sucked to watch. But then you end on a 3-game losing streak. Not the best, not ideal. But then you go up to U Miami. You're losing to Louisville. You're beating Louisville. You lose to Virginia, who understand like that's fine. You lose to Virginia, but you're beating up on some not great teams here. Other than this win at home against Louisville and on the road at SMU, a lot of people are taking Miami. I think Missouri's a good upset pick here. And then you go to the Big Ten champions, the Purdue Boilermakers, who are hot going into this tournament. They are so hot going into this tournament. They beat arguably one of, if not the best teams in the nation. They beat UCLA, who I think is going to make a run. They beat another top team in the nation in Nebraska. They beat Northwestern twice. You beat Indiana, who was a bubble team. You lost to Michigan here, fine, because you made it up. You made up for it here. I think Purdue is one of the best teams in the country right now. Queens making their first tournament appearance ever. And you get matched up against 2-seeded Purdue, who is going to take this and run with it all the way to the Sweet 16. We'll just start at the bottom for this one. Now, we go to BYU and Gonzaga. I think a lot of people are going to be picking Gonzaga here. I don't know. There's something I like about this BYU team, and I think that they have potential to make it to at least the Sweet 16 and take down the Bulldogs from Gonzaga. BYU gives up a lot of points per game, but make up to it in the points that they score. Gonzaga, like I say, all their stats are skewed because of the teams that they play in their conference. BYU is in a lot better conference in the Big 12, so that's why the stats are skewed. So you have BYU versus Purdue in the Sweet 16, and we're going to take Arkansas and Arizona. This game, like I said, is potential to be one of the best games of the tournament, if not the best game of the tournament. Arkansas had a very tough strength of schedule. Utah. Wisconsin also had a relatively difficult strength of schedule, but Arkansas puts up points, man. And when you have a player like Darius Acuff Jr., who honestly should be getting more recognition than he is, you can't even bet on him to be the first overall pick in the NBA draft. And I think that there's a valid argument for him to be that pick in that, like, at least a top 3 pick, and you can't even do that. There's arguments for him to be a top pick in the NBA draft. I think that by the end of this tournament, he's going to prove that he should be a top pick in the NBA draft. Especially when they take down Arizona to move on to the Elite 8. I think Arkansas is ideal team to make a run in this tournament. They're going to take down Hawaii. They'll take down Wisconsin. I think Arizona is the weakest of the 1 seeds, so they'll take down Arizona as well. Arizona is going to be a sneaky team, though, because there's always that 1 seed that everybody overlooks that makes the run. Yeah, they're a sneaky team, and I think that watch out for them, but Arkansas is going to take them down. And this is where BYU's run is going to end. Purdue here, I have moving on to the Elite 8 against Arkansas. Honestly, this matchup is such a coin flip for me. Arkansas has to prove it. I don't think they have proven it yet. I don't remember ever seeing them go this far, at least recently, maybe once or twice. And Purdue's just such a hot team. This is honestly now that I'm thinking about it, this is a tough matchup to pick. Let's have some fun. Arkansas is going to the Final Four. Let's do it. Now, as we move on to see who Duke will be facing in the Final Four, you got Florida versus Prairie View A&M or Lehigh. We're just going to take Florida. Don't need to do too much talking about that. Iowa versus Clemson. Seems like the world is agreeing with me. Iowa 1-8 versus the top 25. I've been taking Iowa in every bracket that I've done. but they are a cold, cold team and not very good against top 25 teams. Clemson, no, give me Clemson. Lost last year to McNeese. This is a proven game for Clemson. Everybody's picking against them. Give me Clemson. Now, speaking of McNeese versus Vanderbilt. I hate Vanderbilt as a Tennessee fan. Don't like them. But I think a lot of people are going to be picking McNeese because of what happened last year, and I don't think they don't have the aura that they had last year. And I think Vanderbilt is going to win this game here. Unfortunately, in my eyes, it's unfortunate. Then we got Nebraska versus Troy. I believe I saw a stat right before I started recording. This is the first matchup in tournament history where both teams do not have a tournament win. Now, Nebraska being such a big team in the Big Ten, no pun intended, that's a shocker. I was shocked when I saw that. And I believe I saw also that this is the most popular 13/4 upset in the tournament. But you're going to give me Nebraska here to get their first tournament win. They've looked good all year, and I don't think the Trojans are going to stop them. VCU and North Carolina. I teased it before that I have an 11 seed, or not an 11 seed. I have a team that has been a Cinderella run before, being another Cinderella run. With Caleb Wilson out, not playing for UNC. Listen, they've proved themselves. They've proved that they could still win without him, but I think this is where their luck ends, and I think that VCU is going to be the team to overpower them out of the A10. Give me VCU. Illinois versus UPenn. I think this is the most picked 14/3 upset, but I'm not going to take that. I'm not too high on Illinois, but I'm still going to take them over the Ivy League champion. Should have been Yale, honestly. I don't know how you don't foul down 3 with 3 seconds left. That was just a terrible decision on Yale's head coach, and it cost them. And now UPenn is the 14 seed playing Illinois, who will lose to Illinois. St. Mary's versus A&M. I'm going to go with St. Mary's here. I'm very high on St. Mary's. I know it's the same thing as Gonzaga, but it's just something about St. Mary's. I don't know. I'm going to take them over A&M. Houston over Idaho, but I don't think St. Mary's is going to be able to beat the Cougars. I think they're going to be out for revenge. They will do everything in their power to play Florida, who I have beaten Clemson. They're going to do everything in their power to beat Florida to get that revenge from the championship last year. And Houston is going to have to get through Idaho, St. Mary's, and the VCU Rams over Illinois. Like I said, not too high on Illinois this year, and VCU is the hottest team in this, I believe in this region. I think they are. Only loss coming to St. Louis, who was ranked. Give me VCU over Illinois, and this is where their run ends. We're going to go Houston. Ignore that. Houston's going to win that game. With Vanderbilt, Nebraska, give me Vandy. I don't think Nebraska is built tournament ready, if that makes sense. They don't have a tournament win. It's kind of shocking. And I think that Vanderbilt's looked good all season, as much as I hate to say it. So give me Vandy to move on against Florida, who I have winning. And we have a national championship rematch going on in the Elite Eight of the South region, right? South region, yes. So in the Elite Eight of the South region, we have a national championship rematch in Florida versus Houston. This game could be the best game in the whole tournament, like I said, for the Wisconsin-Arkansas game. This also has potential to be the best game. Now, the thing I'd like to point out with Florida, they have a top 10 strength of schedule and still score 87 basically points per game. But I think that Houston is going to have their number this time, and I think that they're going to get their revenge for the national championship last season. And with that, you got Duke versus Houston in your Final Four in Indianapolis for this region over here and this region down here. Now, who is going to play Arkansas? We're going to take Michigan. I think it's going to be UMBC. We've seen them upset the best team in the nation before. It's not going to happen this time with Michigan moving on. Georgia versus St. Louis. A lot of people are going to be picking St. Louis here. I watched that Dayton game. They're 6-4 in their last 10. That Dayton game was a close game, but Dayton almost blew it, if I'm not mistaken. George Washington blew a huge lead they had over St. Louis. Loyola Chicago is not a good team. They beat VCU, like I said, but that's only one game. Give me Georgia. I don't think the Billikens are going to be able to make the run that a lot of people think they are, even with Robbie Avila. I love Robbie Avila. Hang on, let me think about this for a second. Give me St. Louis to play Michigan. Let's do it. Let's ride the wave of Robbie Avila. Now we got Tech versus Akron. This is a big upset that a lot of people are picking, and I'm going to pick it too. I love Akron this year. JT Toppin out for the season, messing with Texas Tech's flow, their vibe. Give me Akron. And I think that, yeah, give me Akron. Alabama versus Hofstra. Alabama's, what is it, their second best player? He just got arrested yesterday. That's going to take a toll on this Alabama team, who I didn't think was going to be able to make a run in the first place, if I'm being completely honest. I didn't think Bama was going to make this big run, and I don't think that they are without him now, especially. This is honestly a very tough matchup for me. I'm going to play it safe and say that Bama's going to win this game here, but I might be placing a bet on Hofstra because that wouldn't surprise me. Now, my boys, my Volunteers, are going to either play Miami, Ohio, or SMU. Miami, Ohio, one of the top scoring teams in the nation. 9-1, obviously they only have one loss, and that was to UMass, the Minutemen, who are not a great team. And Miami, Ohio always finds a way to make the games that they play close. And I think that once they play a real team from the SEC, they are going to lose. UVA, Wright State. I think Nick has Wright State going very far because he likes their logo, if I remember from his video. But UVA is just such a good team, and I can't see them losing. They almost beat Duke in the ACC championship, and they beat Miami twice. They beat NC State twice. They're beating all of these tournament teams. Ohio State, give me Virginia to beat Wright State. You got Kentucky and Santa Clara. Santa Clara coming out of the West Coast Conference once again. The West Coast Conference has 3 teams in this tournament. And I think, personally, Santa Clara is the best team of those 3. But do they have what it takes to take down Kentucky? Yeah, they do. They do have what it takes to take down Kentucky. We're going to have Santa Clara going on to the round of 32 against the Cyclones from Iowa State against Tennessee State. Now, as we move back up towards the top of this bracket, we're going to have Michigan against St. Louis. It's Michigan. Michigan's such a good team. I really don't see how I would be stunned if they don't make it out of this region to the Final Four. But before that, they're going to have to get through the Zips from Akron. I think this is where Bama's run is going to end. I don't, like I said, think Bama is going to be a good team this year in the tournament. So I think Akron is going to make this run. We're going to have an 11 seed and a 12 seed make it to the Sweet 16, where they will have to play the 2 of the toughest teams in Michigan and Houston. But before that, we're going to have my boys, my Volunteers from Tennessee, against the Virginia Cavaliers, and I think that this is where my boys are done. We've never made it to the Final Four. We've still never made it to the Final Four, and it's not going to happen this year when you have to play Virginia. And Iowa State, I think the West Coast Conference is going to look a little weak coming out of the... look a little weak going into this weekend, going into Saturday, or coming out of Saturday. They're going to look hot going into Saturday, and by the time the weekend is over, I believe all of them will be gone, right? I have Gonzaga losing. Yes, that is correct. I think the West Coast Conference, they will all be gone. By Monday, you will not see a West Coast Conference team. Now, as we move up to Michigan and the Zips from Akron, you just can't. Yeah, Michigan's going to win that one. Virginia and Iowa State. Now, this is an interesting game. This is going to be a very close game if it does come to fruition, like I think it will. They're very similar in points per game, very similar in opponent points per game. Virginia's the hot team, though, and we're going to see them move on to play the Michigan Wolverines. And I think the Wolverines are going to move on. I don't really want to talk about Michigan a lot because I think that they are just going to steamroll through this conference or through this region to play the Arkansas. I don't even remember what their team is. Hoosiers, Pigs, War Pigs. I don't even remember. And we got Duke and Houston. I don't like picking the two best teams to move all the way to the championship. And I don't think it's going to happen this year. We're going to have Duke and we're going to have Arkansas taking down the Michigan Wolverines. One of the hottest teams in the nation is going to take down the Wolverines because Michigan, they've been playing a lot of close games. They've been winning them. They'll win these close games, but you're going to have to find a way around it at some point. And we saw that with the Purdue game that you're not going to be able to come back from every loss that you have. So it's going to be tough for Michigan once they get to these really difficult games. And we're going to have Duke versus Arkansas in the national championship. And this is the year that Duke takes the golds, takes the national championship, brings it back to Durham, North Carolina. And yeah, listen, thank you all for watching. This is the official Beyond the Bench prediction as we move in to March Madness. First 4 games starts tonight. We got Texas and NC State, and I believe UMBC plays tonight as well. So enjoy March. Hopefully, one of your brackets goes perfect, and we will see you next week in our next video. I will be back with Nick next week. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week.